Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us live on the Bottom Line. And on the Bottom Line, we say business at the speed of thought. I am happy about tonight, but the discussions are not a very palatable one. I am sure you will be interested in it. So we have two main things coming up tonight. The first is, should Ghana return to the IMF? Have you seen the tweet by Gabi Dakun? It's been interpreted by some people as a signal to everybody that's concerned about the economy to expect that Ghana may soon be approaching the IMF for a bailout. The discussions has been back and forth previously that Ghana will not return to the IMF, especially when the topic about the e-levy was rife. It was a rift between selecting the e-levy over going for an IMF bailout or opting for an IMF bailout over subscribing to the e-levy. The country did subscribe to the e-levy, and people thought that the IMF issues are over. But from yesterday and around this morning, some people have resorted to taking the tweet by Gabi Dakun as a signal for the country towards going to the IMF for a bailout. What are the stakes? We'll be speaking to economists about this. And then, have you seen the new prices of petrol, especially, and fuel, petrol and diesel, especially? Diesel is hovering around 13.39%, and petrol is also very high. Tonight, we want to be speaking to experts in the petroleum industry as well about, we know there is the deregulation policy, but what exactly is accounting for all of these things, and how are we able as a country to overcome this? We may do some comparisons across the sub-Saharan African space and see where we are as a country. So you want to stick and stay with us tonight. We are coming your way live from our studios here at Rage in Accra. We are live on DSTV channel 277, and we are live on Facebook, Chairman Kwesi Afriyie. Tonight is a very interactive one. So our numbers are on the screen. You want to send your consent on the WhatsApp line. We'll try as much as possible to read them. Along the line, we'll open up the phone lines as well, and we'll scroll that also on the screen. You can join the conversation with your concern via the phone or via the WhatsApp lines, and we'll try as much as possible to get them across. Stick and stay with us. We'll be right back. This is the Bottom Line. You're welcome back from the break. This is the Bottom Line. Let me remind you that tonight we are talking about whether Ghana should return to the IMF. And then secondly, we will be talking about the economic challenges, the keys of rising inflation, and of course, petroleum prices. But to start with, this morning we saw a tweet by Gabi Dakun, not a former member of government, but of course, when he speaks, it has connotations on how government acts, or how eventually we see the way government does its things. And the tweet this morning suggested to some people that Ghana may be heading to the IMF very soon. This comes on the back of the conversations around the e-levy and whether we should go to the IMF or not. So we want to be asking our experts tonight whether Ghana should go to the IMF or not. And I'll read the tweet to you. This is 11 hours ago, as of the time we did the snapshot of this tweet. It says, after 5 months of stalemate and bashing, the e-levy, after implementation, is delivering only 10% of estimated revenues. Our revenues remain very low as compared to the rest of the world. Debt levels dangerously high. Cedi, like most currencies, struggling against the US dollar. Now the second tweet. What options are open to government? That's a question with a question mark there. The question should rather be, what option, if adopted, will re-inject investor confidence in our economy? Even if we find the $3 to $5 billion required, will that help? And that is related to the e-levy, I guess. E-levy, which was to have given us some 600 million Ghana cedis by now, has done less than 60 million cedis. Our economy is growing faster than most countries around the world, but that alone can't save us as confidence in our ability to service our debts is lowering. We can't continue to use all the little revenues raised to pay our debts. Very soon, we may have to borrow to pay wages. I think we do that already. If you look at the monies that come into the Ghana Revenue Authority's coffers and how much is expended on salaries, we may be able to conclude that we borrow to pay salaries or pay wages. Now, Ghana is a member of the IMF. The world is in serious crisis. Ours is not helped by our high debt and low income levels. With the economy still growing, but investor confidence low, government being compelled to cut down capital expenditures will eventually lead to job losses unless. Now, yes, our revenue to GDP ratio is among the lowest in the world, even in Africa. But with the current global hardships and cost of living rising everywhere in the world, a decision by any government to intensify taxation measures, especially for workers, may not be too clever. On this particular tweet, I'll come back to the commentary session when we are asking our questions, and people have said that you still went ahead to tax the e-levy. If the way of taxation is not too clever, we still went ahead to do the e-levy. But let's come back to what we are reading. There is understandably a national aversion to the IMF program. That means we don't like the IMF program because of the history of conditionalities which attack sacred cows like jobs and social interventions. Akufo-Addo will not sacrifice free SHS and other critical welfare policies to help the poor for any assistance. That's Gabi referring to himself, I'm not for an IMF program that throws peanuts at us but imposes conditions that will end up hurting the poor, jobs, and businesses more. COVID-19 and war in Ukraine are not of Africa's doing, but more to our doom. A program that pretends it is all our doing is doomed to fail. We do something that will inject confidence in our capacity to ride this heavy storm, and that something should happen pretty quickly. Are you against an IMF program? Am I against an IMF program in principle? No. And I think that's where the tweet ends. And we want to put this to you. If you're watching us from wherever you are across the globe, whether on social media or you're watching us on your screens here in Ghana, even on DSTV, wherever you are, we may want to go back to these tweets in the course of the program. But what do you think? What does this suggest to you? And what do you think as somebody concerned about the economy of this country? Should we go back to the IMF, or we should maybe expand the tax net, or we should increase the spirit of taxation? These are the points that have been suggested or have been put across, let me put it that way, by Gabi Asari Ochedako. And tonight, we want to play the advocate of asking questions, and we may, at the end of it all, pass our judgment also, or make our commentary also. But we have on the line Professor John Gatsi, my very own boss, Dean, University of Cape Coast Business School. And we want him to run us through this and what the stakes are for us. And then when we are back, if we have some more time, we'll be doing the bit on the petroleum. So, Prof, if you can hear me, good evening to you. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Good evening, and thank you for having me.
Prof, I do believe that you've seen the tweet of Gabriel Asari Ochedako, and I want to go ahead and ask you straight, if you have. What does this mean? Does it suggest to you that we may be heading towards the IMF very soon?
Well, I think it has many more information that you want to focus on. Mm-hmm. The first lesson that one wants to take from the tweet is that this is a time to agree that the economy is not going well. This is a time to indicate that confidence relating to the economy of Ghana is very low, and credibility for the programs and strategy we have adopted have not been working, and that we need that credibility and confidence through an engagement with an institution that will attract investor confidence and credibility to our program. That is the confession in the statement. And again, the statement sought to expose the country's risky situation the more to creditors. Because if you told creditors that you are creating a new revenue path, and that will help to deal with all the debt situation that we have, and that you are capable of repaying your debt, then after a while, you come that revenue conduit is not performing. It's underperforming to the tune of 90%. You are only realizing about 60 million against 600 million Ghana cedis. You are actually demonstrating the risk exposure of a creditor to the economy. That, look, what we told you in the past, we believe it is not working, and we are fragile. We may not be able to meet our obligation relating to debt management. And that, I think, is a precarious statement that we need to focus on much more than whether one has to go to IMF and the rest. But on the question as to whether is it time that for us to go to IMF, I also need to correct some misinformation in the tweet. In the past, especially in the 80s, the environment and the conditions placed on countries going to IMF is quite different from in the early 2000s up to date.
Yes.
In the early 2000s, during the HIPIC initiative, when the MPP led Ghana into IMF program, you realize that the conditions were friendly to the development of the country. The conditions were friendly to the development of social infrastructure. At that time, putting in place social infrastructure plan is a condition to get access to funding to develop the country. So the issue about social intervention was actually a conditionality associated with a HIPIC initiative under the IMF, under the MPP administration from 2001. That is the reason why the MPP in recent time could relate to a number of social intervention programs. So actually, IMF program from 2001 to date does not kill social intervention programs. Again, we recall that when the MPP took over and inherited the IMF program, it was under the IMF program that they rolled out all those social intervention programs that they are talking about.
Exactly.
So if the same cheat is talking about going to IMF program hinder social intervention, that is totally wrong. That is not the truth. Under the two IMF programs that I have talked to you about. So that a misconception or creating some fear against IMF when we are running down the economy downhill, I think that it's not helpful, especially at this point in time when the government is in dire straits and needs support. So I think the narration ought to change further. I believe that what Gabi has done is to create the impression that now we are ready to go to IMF if the IMF is ready to take us on. But I also believe that when you read Article 4 visitation reports on Ghana recently, there are two important requirements in the executive summary that even if Ghana wants to go to IMF must actually fulfill as a precondition. One is to create a revenue conduit, which they have done through the e-levy. The second one is to conduct COVID-19 expenditure audit, which has not been done. So I believe even if Ghana is ready to go to IMF, that condition ought to be fulfilled, or
Yes.
it to be packaged into the program to be fulfilled when the program starts running. So those are the things that I can comment on regarding the statement.
But Prof, let me ask you: do you foresee, I mean, on your own, that we may be heading towards the IMF soon? Apart from Gabby's tweet, he raises on the issue of the fact that it doesn't kill social interventions. He had raised issues about wages and salaries, which we have experienced before as a country, where when the program to restore debt sustainability some time ago, during I think President Mahama or President Mills' time, we had to cut wages and salaries and hiring, especially of new public servants and so on and so forth. He believes some of these were conditionalities given by the IMF, which affected the economy. And so if we are to go back to it, it may again. Yes, please go ahead, Prof.
I think those are just political propaganda surrounding the IMF. By this, I'm not saying that the IMF has provided the best of solution to countries. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
But the point is that that under the previous IMF program, there was nothing like job losses. We had teachers being employed. We have people in the military security services being employed. So to say that there was no employment under the IMF program, that was not true. The numbers are there to check. But the point is that anytime we are going to IMF, it's because of our misbehavior, imprudent behavior that led us to IMF. So if you are supposed to employ 5 people, you employ 50 people. And those are the things causing problem for you. And along the line, somebody was bold and tell you that, look, that is where your problem is coming from. It is not the doing of IMF. It is our imprudent behavior. It is our mismanagement. It is our political interference in terms of packing people in jobs that they cannot even have space to operate. So we need to do some introspection and see how do countries go into IMF program. Normally, because there is a huge problem, lack of focusing on prudent behavior, etc. IMF will not come and support your imprudent behavior. IMF will not come and support your mismanagement, etc. So I think we need to discuss the thing objectively. I believe we are all aware that the government of Ghana, through the the former senior minister, Osafo Mafo, finance minister himself, they have told us clearly that there's no job in the public system again.
Yes.
They have told that. Are they under IMF program before telling us those things? No. So the propaganda against IMF program to create the impression that MPP doesn't go to IMF program, IMF for any support, I think is biting us. Indeed, MPP went to IMF in 2001. Indeed, MPP extended IMF program from 2017 up to 2019 thereabout. So that record is there. So MPP government should not create the impression that Ghanaians are so averse going to IMF. It's because of what we feed the public with. We didn't tell the public that MPP is not known for a social intervention. It was a condition enshrined in the IMF program. That is what made MPP, tilted towards social interventions. So I think we need to go passionate. But I would not say go to IMF or not go to IMF. Going to IMF is a choice of a government. A government should not be afraid of indicating its intention.
But Prof, from where you said, we are speaking to you as an expert, and you have obviously monitored the economy, and from you lecturing and studying researching about the economy and everything that happens within the economy, I'm sure you're able to tell us maybe an advice to government, whether government should go or not. So are you able to tell us, in the current hardships that we are, which I think you agree to, should we go to the IMF?
No, I will not answer that question. The reason is that in the past 5 months, the government will ensure that some of the people related to the management of this economy will make subtle comment to indicate that government is considering going to IMF. Then it will bring all of us to the table of discussion. After a while, then the government will come and say, we are not even considering going to IMF.
Yes.
That is how they have been going about this issue of going to IMF. If the government wants to go to IMF, it should be a policy choice. It should be a policy decision they should announce to us. This kind of tweeting to tease the mind of Ghanaians, I think that we have gone past that. And I will not answer that question by saying that go to IMF. If the government wants to go to IMF, they should open the lid. Let us see what is in it.
Right. I want to ask you about the current hardships in the economy, but let me just read two things and then I'll come back to the questioning. This one says, good evening. There is a saying that the blow which is inevitable or inevitably yours, I'm sure you want to write, earlier received will extricate from all torrential hostilities. The earlier we go to the IMF, the better for Ghana. Kweku La Paz sent in that one. We don't have to go to the IMF. The government should stop the programs like the National Cathedral Project and use the money for some real necessities. You didn't mention your name and where you are coming from. There is a recent tweet and from Gabi Asayochi again. I'm sure I'll be able to check the timing. This says, if the e-levy is so far not bringing in the estimated revenues, it does not mean it is a bad tax. It means Ghanaians simply do not want to pay taxes. And that's what Gabi says. But somebody thinks that we should stop some programs that we are doing and focus on building the economy rather than going to the IMF or even expanding taxes. Prof, let me get to you, and I understand that we have Palgrave on the line. We'll get to Palgrave shortly. Hello, Prof, are you there?
I'm here.
Yes, I can hear you now. I can hear you loud and clear. So, I had said that, or I had read one of the messages which says, we don't have to go to IMF. The government should stop some programs. Well, he mentions the National Cathedral. He says, like the National Cathedral Project, and use the money for some real necessities. Doc, are we on the right path as a country in the management of the economy? That's the question I wanted to ask.
I think when you listen to the reading of the tweet, Gabi was very clear about what they are looking for. He said they have tried their best. They are not getting the confidence. They did whatever they wanted to do, but they are not getting the credibility. Going to IMF has gone beyond diverting whatever is going to National Cathedral to support the building of the country. It has to do with confidence. It has to do with credibility. And he's saying that all those measures that you talk about, they are good, but they will not bring the credibility. They are seeing the shadow of the credibility with the IMF, and they are finding a way of trying to announce it. And that is why I'm saying they should be bold and announce that now we have seen the shadow of the credibility we are looking for, the shadow of confidence for the economy, very close to IMF, and we want to go there and seek refuge. And that we can start the discussion from there.
Right. Thank you, Prof. But please do stay on a bit for me. And I have a bite from Palgrave Boachi Dankwa. He's a government spokesperson, and he's spoken a bit on the economy, how he thinks it should be. We want you to listen to it, and then we'll come back to a statement that you have made about the managers of the economy itself. Kindly hold on. Let's listen to Palgrave.
Another Duncan has been very concerned globally about the issues that are happening, and you are aware that Ghana is not in isolation of issues that happens within the globe. we've come out very stronger out of COVID-19, and whilst we're coming out of COVID, there were global issues. I mean, people will not want to talk about it, but clearly, whatever happens in Ukraine and Russia affects UK, affects all the NATO countries, and by extension, Africa as a development country to affect us. So, as mandated by President Duncan, every quarter, the president would have an extended retreat with his cabinet. You are aware that happened in March. And so when the cabinet retreat was done in Peduasi for an extended 3 days, he came up to put together measures. I mean, the Bank of Ghana came in to put together policy rates. And then on the Thursday, the Minister for Finance laid out a number of measures that government seeks to do. Number one, government sought to cut down expenditure, 30% expenditure. Government sought to cut down. Government sought to cut down 50% on fuel allowances that is given to government appointees, state-owned enterprises, CEOs. Government as well sought to cut down 20% of salaries from the executive and even for all state-owned CEOs and presidential appointees. Government has also to cut down per diems on conferences by 50%. Government cut down on travels for external travels out of the country. Government cut them down. Government as well cut down on importation of vehicles, that we should make use of vehicles within the country. Government also seized and the immediate establishment of public agencies, and all of these measures is supposed to be a measure for the next, at the time from March, it was supposed to be till the end of the year, which is 9 months. We've gone 3 months into it, so clearly sometime this week, I'm very certain that the President, Duncan, is going to have some meeting with his executive and cabinet to be able to assess the first 3 months of the measures. How had that been? How much money have we been able to rake in? And what other measures could we put in place? And so we need to be able to wait for cabinets to have their meeting, and then we'll be able to put that together. But clearly you can see that the Ghanaian people are greatly appreciating that government cares. Government is not oblivion to the challenges that are berating this country. The president cares, the vice president cares, the entire country cares about what is happening. And so government is making sure that robustly they are meeting up to the needs that are rising with the daily challenges of the Ghanaian people.
So that's Palgrave Boachedankwa, government spokesperson on security, speaking on the economy. Prof, let me come to you, but let me quickly also announce that we have Duncan Amoah, the executive secretary of COPEC. We'll be talking to him pretty shortly about the petroleum prices and the increasing rates of the prices itself. But let me come to you, Prof, on what Palgrave says.
Well, I don't think he has spoken to what we are discussing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure he has spoken to what we are discussing, so I don't know what.
Well, he talks about, managing the economy, moving it into the right direction, government appreciating the fact that we are in hardships. And so if you take away, or if you even talk about what Gabi is writing, there is an issue that, yes, there are challenges in the economy, but government is doing something about it, which is in the right direction.
Well,
yes, I can hear you, Prof.
Yeah, we know that all those measures are not yielding fruit. That's what Gabi is talking about, that they have done all that they could, but it's not yielding the needed result. Those steps taken by Bank of Ghana and the fiscal measures have not yielded the needed result. The situation continues to deteriorate. So that's what Gabi is talking about. And I agree with him that is the situation in which we are. So those statements about cutting expenditure, you see, before the investor will give some credit to those measures, those measures should to translate into the books. If you cut down expenditure by that margin, it should affect the deficit, but it has not affected the deficit. It should affect the amount of borrowing, because borrowing is aligned to deficit. So government is just not spending because the money is not there. So we can't call those things as real measures. And to use Gabi's words, they have done all those things, but the confidence is not coming. The credibility is not coming. That is what we need to tackle. And again, without confronting those who have interest in the National Cathedral, ask yourself, all those cuts in salary for the category of people mentioned, and the 200 million we have spent on the National Cathedral. If you speak to a reasonable investor, do you think that you have confidence in your economy? No. So I think those are issues that government should come to that realization and stop certain things and focus on what is realistic and very important at the time. It is only then that the economy may respond to some of these things.
Look, Prof, forgive me. I'm leaving you here, but finally, you've been quoted by Star FM Online as that's to the effect that we should lay the blame of the hardships you are facing in the country currently at the doorstep of the finance minister. And in fact, this is not just within the current space, but from 2017. How so?
Can I go on?
Yes, please. Prof, you can go on.
Well, in the first place, I'm not the one who writes the headline for Star FM. So I'm not responsible for their headlines. Number two, the question they posed was to the effect that they were trying to put blame on the economic management team. And I explained to them that the economic management team is not a creation of the Constitution. Ministries, department, and the rest have direct legal establishment, which the finance minister is heading. Again, another governance establishment known by the Constitution is cabinet. So if there is a convention created to provide some quick guidance and advice to the governance process of this country, and we want to shift blame onto that framework, then I think we are missing the point. It is the finance minister who has led us from 2017 in terms of our borrowing, our fiscal management, and the rest. So if the fiscal management, especially debt, is creating problem for us, we should focus on the finance ministry and the finance minister instead of overly talking about a high arrangement like economic management team. That was my statement.
Right.
So whatever headline they put, it is your job to put the headline you think it will sell.
Right.
And that cannot be blamed on me.
Prof, we are grateful for your time this evening. We've learned a lot, and I'm sure in the subsequent days, when we see any shift, probably towards the IMF or any new policy direction as regards raising of revenues to support the economy, we'll still come back to you to get your thoughts on that. We are grateful for your time tonight. So that was Professor John Gatsi, Dean, University of Cape Coast Business School. I'll pick, I think, one or two messages, go for a quick break, and then we'll come to Duncan Amoah. He is the Executive Secretary of COPEC, and he will be talking about to us about the increase or consistent increase in petroleum prices. Now, this one says, who is telling Gabi Ochidakun that food is cheap in the villages at the moment? Or is he talking about the food he just harvested from his own farm? You didn't give us your name. Good evening. I only have one question to Akufo-Addo. What did he Ghanaians for, or what did he take Ghanaians for, and how long are we going to sit idle for him to continue making? Well, this is not political, so I'll continue editing some of the things you sent to us. He told Ghanaians we are sitting on money, and he's now borrowing to enjoy his luxurious flights. A.J. Sedem from Adenta sent in that one. Cornelius Fineboy from Qatar says the government needs to cut unnecessary spending like staffs of presidency, hiring of presidential jets, amongst others. This one is coming from, doesn't look you are coming to me as you are adding more panelists for the limited. Right, okay. I didn't get this one. I think government should remove some of the freebies in the free SHS. The feeding should be removed. Okay, let me pick this final one, then we can come to Duncan. If we have to get out of this economic quagmire, we have to reduce the ministers to 19, presidential staffers to 300, Supreme Court judges to 9, restore 10 regions, reduce MMDs to 100, prosecutor, corrupt appointees, and retrieve our monies, reduce presidential travels, and restore toll booths. Sidwood from Achimota sent in that one. We'll take a quick break. When we are back, it's about the petroleum prices in Ghana. Stay with us. Alrighty, welcome back from the break. This is still the bottom line. I am privileged to be having on the line now, or on Zoom, Duncan Amoah, the Executive Secretary of the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers here in Ghana. Well, shortly we call it COPEC. And he usually, or the institution usually projects how petroleum prices are going to go almost every 2 weeks. And it happens exactly so as they project. As we speak, diesel prices are hovering around 13.9%. Let me welcome Duncan Amoah, and I'll ask him, why are we in this situation? So, good evening to you. Thank you very much for joining us, Duncan. If you can hear me, you're welcome to the show.
Good evening, and thank you for having me.
I hope you're doing very well.
We are where we are. Say again?
I hope you're doing very well. You can go ahead. I mean, with the question I put across. Then.
Well, I always say health-wise, most of us are very well. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, our pockets continue to dry up by the day because you have a lot to pay for at the pumps. And I'm quite certain that every Ghanaian you speak to currently will tell you the most biting thing as far as the expenditure lines is concerned will be petroleum and petroleum products. Why are we here? We are here because we've refused to plan. I did make those opening remarks today elsewhere, and others said, oh, we do plan. But I do not see how a country that plans cannot see that post-COVID there could be challenges, that once Russia attacks Ukraine, there could be challenges, or once whatever currency issues you have, you could also have challenges. We simply leave the decision to do with a few people who sometimes do not even appreciate the germane issues and simply go about, the normal day as though nothing is happening. At 13 cedis a liter for diesel, I simply think that we have crossed a crisis stage. A crisis stage in the sense that you are not probably paying as well within this country. A lot of Ghanaian workers hardly get by as far as their incomes are concerned. And so petroleum pricing should be a bit realistic. But unfortunately, for the average Ghanaian who earns 2,000 or engine that initially could take 150 cedis for the entire week, today you might need 200, 300, sometimes 350, 400. And so petrol alone will take not less than 50% of your income. Yet inflation is also on the rise and galloping simply because fuel has gone up, and it's dragging every other commodity price within the country also upwards. We do think that we have simply failed to plan. We have simply failed to act. We've been talking for God knows how long. We've been cautioning. In fact, when prices are about going up, we almost always will put out a statement indicating price movement both on the local market and international market.
And the prices do actually go up.
Yes, hoping some mitigating measures could be put in place. Unfortunately, people go to sleep on these things. We move from 6, went to 7 to 8 to 9 to 10 to 11, and every year, let me put this out there. If we don't see anything drastic, a paradigm shift from the kind of system we are operating currently, July will come with harsher challenges. August could be worse. And we think that, yes, deregulation has worked to a point. In normal times, yes, you could expect deregulation to work. But where you are getting to is not a very normal time. And so you might need to suspend deregulation entirely and take certain drastic decisions aimed at stabilizing fuel price for your people. I do not think that the continuous rationalization and excuse making from some quarters has solved anything. And I always almost would end by saying, look, the more you insult some of us, the more you dispute the scientific data we put out, the more the pumps simply expose you. And so we think that the key decision makers have got to sit at the round table and take the very hard decisions, some of which I can share with you.
Yes, I'm glad to listen to you on that.
Nothing can be done about the circumstances we find ourselves. It is not true that nothing can be done. There's a lot that we could change, tweak, or twist to bring about some relief to our people. One of them from simply taxes. Assuming you depart from simply reviewing taxes, is there any other mitigating measure that could be put in place to stabilize prices? Yes, there are other mitigating measures that could be put in place.
Okay.
And if authorities are so minded or so interested, we'll be willing any day, any time to probably contribute ideas towards a realization. You cannot continue to be in this sort of situation and leave your strategic buffer like boss to continue to behave as though it were some private BDC. You cannot continue to have fuel prices increase every 2 weeks in your country and pretend that you will continue to want to import petroleum products in fragmented, in a fragmented manner.
But Duncan, on the point, on that particular point, we have heard the Chief Executive Officer of the National Petroleum Authority saying that, if you talk about bust, it gives us the bigger impression of safety nets, where we have a lot of oil to be able to curtail this increasing prices. The NPA boss says there is enough fuel in the system.
Every year, serious countries across the world do not keep stocks less than 6 months. Very serious countries, right. Very, very serious. Would plan between 3 months, 6 months. Some would even keep for at least 9 months and sometimes a year. If you have a month stock, what it simply means is that if for any unforeseen circumstance or reason, you don't get cargoes coming in for 2 weeks, you will deplete for 2 weeks, and then you are left with just 2 weeks cover. What 2 weeks cover means is that every single day that passes, your economy will be grinding to, a literal halt. And so, boss, per what we know, per the numbers, if we're stocking up, could at least hold this country for between 2.5 months to 3 months, boss alone. If you added the tour storage, you probably will be able to do at least 4 months, 5 months for Ghanaians. Now that tour is getting back on stream, right? It means that the tanks could be put to very good use, right? If you do not put these storage spaces to good use, and fuel continues to go up because Russia doesn't look like it is going to stop, whatever issues it has with Ukraine anytime soon, your city doesn't look like it's going to stop depreciating any day soon, you are simply going to be left hanging. And I'm certain, like I did indicate, that July would come. The same dynamics that increased your prices in June would increase the price in July. And that is why I think something drastic ought to be done. What drastic measures would have to be taken? Suspend that deregulation program immediately forthwith, right? How do you suspend that? Ensure that you are centralizing your petroleum importation into the country. You are not saying that whatever you are importing, you are going to sell it for less. You are probably going to sell it for full cost recovery. But premiums, margins, markups, and whatever could be controlled centrally at this point. Then the questioning is asked, how long should we suspend deregulation?
Right.
Some of us will want to believe, okay, for 3 months you could do this. For 6 months, you could attempt, tweaking the system just a little bit to ensure that the very outcomes that you have seen January, February, March, April, May, we are in June. You could forestall that going into July, August, September, if we don't take drastic action every year, the very circumstance that has led us to where we are at 13 per litre for diesel, I'm afraid would simply be at play in June, in July, will be at play in August. I'm sure by December, a lot of Ghanaians will probably want to stay home or not even go out altogether, because you can imagine if at 13, we are reeling under this sort of pressure. When it gets to 17, 18, 19, 20, a litre every year, where would we be? Something drastic ought to be done. And I do not think that the justifications, rationalizations, and the excuses should continue forthwith. We are tired. They've probably played enough game with all of this. They play chess with all of this. The pump numbers simply continue to drag and continue to expose all of us for failing to think differently. And we think that if the government and authorities would want to see something change, they would have to change the system completely to ensure that the city's pressure is curtailed in one way or the other. The solutions will be very happy to share anytime, anywhere, every year.
Yes. So I make three major points as you speak, and it makes the situation very scary. If I should go through them, you have spoken about the taxes, you have spoken about the safety net, and then the pressure on the city. Now, in the next 6 months or so, I am asking myself, are we able to resolve all of these, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 major issues, to be able to reduce the prices of fuel? It doesn't look that feasible to be able to reduce the pressure on the city at the same time provide enough safety nets. And of course, you talk about Bust, the issues at Bust and the behavior of Bust itself. And then these taxes, which are bringing in revenue to government, we are talking about reducing them. Does that mean in the next 6 months, we'll hit some of the figures that you are talking about? We can hit about, for example, 15 Ghana cedis per liter of diesel.
Every year. Let me put this on record.
Mm-hmm.
When the decision is reached by the powers that be today, that yes, indeed, we want to do something about this. We are not happy with the system at play. We are not happy with the way pricing has gone the past 1 year, the past 6 months, the past 2 years. We want to tweak the system. Every year, it won't take you 1 month to complete that cycle.
Wow, 1 month.
Some of them are, it won't take you 1 month to complete that tweaking cycle. You know, we move from a regulated regime to a deregulated regime somewhere June and then July 1st, 2015. It was just a policy shift that we did. And then a lot did change. If we decided today to shift policy from deregulation to a certain centralization of importation, what you are seeking to do will be to cure, right? The fragmented importations that will probably not attract as much economies of scale if you are importing in bulk, right? As opposed to having probably 10 importers bring in 2,000 metric tons each. If you had 20,000 metric ton need or 60,000 metric ton need, and you gave it to an international oil player to supply you that product, chances are that you may be able to bargain a lot better because you have the numbers on your side every year. And so you probably may be attracting some discounts that the market could provide because they are supplying you bigger volume than you probably are getting with the fragmented importations every year. Once that is done, the people to whom you owe for the supply will no longer be 4, 5 suppliers or 10 suppliers, right? Across the world. You just owe one particular supplier. If Bank of Ghana is able to inject 100 million out of a possible 500 million, you are left with 400 million real dollar demand, right? To look for from the commercial banks. If you threw this to them and said, look, I need 400 million USD, my change 2.0 or something, right? The commercial banks are probably likely to come to the table and say, look, okay, I can give 20, I can give 10, as opposed to the individual importers.
Hello, can you hear me? Oh, unfortunately, we lost Duncan Amoah. He's the executive secretary of COPEC, and he's given us 3 major points that if government actually looks at, there will be a solution to the rising prices of fuel here in the country. 1, cut the nuisance taxes. 2, ease the pressure on the city. And 3, provide a safety net, check the behavior of boss, and so on and so forth. Our time is unfortunately up. We will be happy to have gotten him back, but unfortunately our time is up. Tony Kingsford, your message came to us. Kobna Amwatson, your message came to us. Wolanyo Inakwetia, your message came to us. Unfortunately, our time is up. I'm not able to read them, but we are grateful for all your messages. We are grateful to you, Professor John Gatsi, for the first segment of the show, and we are grateful to you, Duncan Amoah, for the second segment of the show. My name is Kwesi Efri. Have a very good evening.